So thank you very much for joining us here today. My name is Graham Foxwell, and I am the product marketing lead here for ITCT Solutions and Content Solution Services. And today we are going to be advancing our journey through the digital transformation landscape. And what we're going to do, we're going to be focusing on the diverse opportunities it presents for enhancing your accounts payable process. Hopefully you've seen the previous deliveries we've done, our webinars that we've done before this. But today we're going to be touching on a number of subjects such as cloud storage, archiving, remote working and compliance. But my colleague will take you through that a bit more in the presentation today. As you saw in the view just now, but you've got on the screen here as well, there's myself here, Graham Foxwell, we've got Simon here, and unfortunately Bob won't be joining us here today because he's not feeling very well. So I hope you get better, Bob, if you see this. So it's just the two of us. Just to let you know where we're going with this, it should only take about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And in the previous webinars, we're asking you to leave we're going to do the questions right at the end. So if you look in your screen, you'll see like a Q&A button at the top there. If you've got any questions throughout the actual presentation, just stick them in there, and right at the end of the presentation, we'll answer those questions for you. Also note that we are recording this and we will be publishing it afterwards, just like the previous ones we've done, and then we've got a fourth one coming after this as well, so please look out for that one. So that's it from me. I'm now going to pass you over to Simon, who will take you through the rest of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Graham. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. For those of you that weren't here for the first couple of webinars, my name's Simon Godfrey, and I head up the content services team here at Kyocera. So basically, the content services team is here to help customers who are reliant on manual paper processes, the storage of documents in a secure and compliant manner, and customers who potentially just want to convert paper into digital documents. I'm going to, as in the last webinar, I'm going to run through a few slides before we provide you all with a short demonstration of our software. Now, over the first couple of webinars, we looked at how we can take an invoice that we've captured from an inbox, extracted all the data fields we would normally manually key into our ERP through the matching and approval process, and then the subsequent inputting of the data into our finance system before we file it away. And today we will look at the benefits of having this data sat in a secure archive that manages access, helps with remote working, and a full audit process of the document and retention policy that surrounds it. And in our final webinar, we're going to look at how we can maximise the investment in this technology to deliver a fast ROI, and how that technology can then be easily expanded into other areas of your organisation in the future. We'll also, at that point, have a look at the impact on Gen Z and Alpha as they come into the workplace. But there'll be more information about that at the end of this webinar about the rest of the series. So let's look at the next stage of this process, how having data sat in a secure archive can manage things like access, help with remote working, and show you a way that we can exactly see who did what and when through a full audit process. And then finally, we're going to show you how we can manage the documents and make sure that we're keeping the right information for the right length of time by adding a retention policy. Now, as I said, what we're covering off in the following slides is what we typically see. There may be processes in here that you may or may not have adopted within your business, but in a lot of instances, what we hear is that this is just the way we've always done it and we didn't know there was an option. And that's fine. Hopefully by the end of these webinars, you'll see what the art of the possible is. So let's just have a recap. In our first webinar, we showed you how we could potentially cut data extract times by 95% through our clever AI and machine learning tool. And then in the second, sorry, there we go. Technology is just running a little bit slow. We showed you how we could then process that electronic document through the matching process and how we could make sure that we had a PO and a GRN or a delivery note. And then we looked how we could get that invoice approved, even if someone was out of the office, via our tasks and email notifications. We lightly touched on mobile working, but we'll cover that more in detail today. And lastly, we showed you how we could add this information through to the ERP. So let's look at today's topic and show you the art of the possible. Now, in the background of this slide is something that we're all fairly familiar with. It's a good old filing cabinet and storage boxes. Okay. Typically, we tend to store documents in our workplace in a filing cabinet, but in some cases, we have so many documents that we have to box them up and store them. This can be in a room in our office or in a warehouse, and in some cases, due to the availability of space, we pay for them to be stored off-site. Now, as we discussed in our previous webinars, paper is incredibly secure. It's exactly where we last filed it. It's absolutely no chance that we can misplace it or lose it, is there? I mean, we're human after all, so things do happen. But if someone asks you to give them a copy of a document you stored 3 years ago, would we know exactly where it was and could we bring it back within seconds? I don't think we could. Well, that document's been misfiled. Again, we're human, so we do make mistakes. What if it's in a box in the middle of a pallet on the top rack in our warehouse? How long would it take us to find it? And if it's stored off-site in our deep storage company, how much will they charge us to find that document and get it back to us, and how long will it take? And then we've got to look at environmental costs and the impacts on that. We're still printing the paper, we're using the toner and the electricity. Someone still has to file those pages and then retrieve them when we need them, only to refile them again. Hopefully they'll put it in the right place this time. And if we take an example of space within our offices as well, because that's a valuable commodity. We put 4 filing cabinets against a wall at the end of our office, it's dead space. I mean, yeah, you can put some plants and some certificates and frames so it makes it look better. But if there's a desk there where someone could add value to your business, that's got to be a good thing, hasn't it? 5 years ago, I did an exercise with a customer who occupied 3 floors in some very nice offices in Holborn in central London. We worked out, because their layout was a row of desks and then a row of expensive 2-drawer file cabinets and then another row of desks, and they repeated this and repeated this and repeated this over the 3 floors that they were working in, that they were spending a staggering £26,000 a month on floor space for filing cabinets and paper. They were even discussing taking the floor below as they needed more space. So long story short, the pages were digitised and some of them were destroyed because in a lot of cases, some of the stuff had been there for over 15 years. And then it was stored into a digital cloud-based solution that enabled them to find documents in seconds using a Google type search. Revolutionary, what some people might say. So if all the documents are now stored in a digital archive, how does that add value to your business? You now have all the documents stored in a secure structure that manages permissions, who can view them. It shows you a secure audit trail of the document when it was stored, edited, deleted. It shows you an up-to-date document in seconds wherever you are in the world, provided you've got a device with access to the internet and the rights to see it, that is. That would then take remote working to a whole new level. Since COVID, home working, remote working has become the norm. But what if a situation arises when you're working at home and you need a document in a filing cabinet in the office and you have a 20-mile trip to get there to go and pick it up? Are you going to drive there to pick it up, or would you get somebody to scan a copy of it and email it to you? This all takes time. This is open to error. What if someone sends you a copy of the contract that you need, but it's last year's and it's now expired and it's been replaced with new terms? That could be an awkward conversation in a meeting with a customer. As businesses are now under more scrutiny and governance and compliance, it's imperative that we're doing everything we can to understand what we have and who has access to it. So when we look at GDPR, the last thing I want to talk about today is retention. If there's one thing that's going to leave us open to breaching GDPR, it's retention. I want to cast your minds back a couple of years to the good old PPI claims that were going around. Companies were set up to capitalize on the money that could be made from consumers for PPI claims. Now, these companies didn't just shut up shop when PPI boom came to an end. They looked at other ways to generate an income in the claims space. So what if I told you that some of these organizations are now out there working with disgruntled ex-employees or property tenants to see if there's a way that their previous employer or landlord could be holding information that might cause them to be in breach of GDPR rules? It's frightening, isn't it? But it is actually happening. Organisations need to make sure that they're keeping the information for the right periods of time. If an ex-employee comes back to you in 2 years after parting ways and asks for information that you still hold about them, if you happen to have a document on file that you should have deleted the day after they left, then you're technically in breach. In the UK, the fines for a serious breach, and let's be honest, holding a document relating to an ex-employee might be minor, but if it is serious, the fines are currently 17.5 million or 4% of your annual worldwide turnover, whichever is higher. So we need to just make sure that what we've got, we're keeping right. So, because Bob's off sick, I'm now going to show you a quick demo of the solution. In this session, I'm going to show you how we can access a document regardless of our location. That's provided we have access to it. We'll then show you how we can audit any changes to make sure that we can see what's going on with the document. We can literally see who did what and when. I'll show you how that document that we are working on is the most up-to-date version, so we don't send an out-of-date contract with the old terms to our customer. And lastly, I'll show you how we can automate the deletion of the documents from our system via intelligent retention policies. That way we don't get caught out in the future with a random but perfect coached subject matter access request. Sound good? Perfect. Let's have a look. So what we have here is a DocuWare screen, which you'll have seen from the previous demos that Bob did, where we captured that invoice and brought it into the system, sucked all the data out of it, and then put it through the approval process. And if I just do a quick search for the documents that we have, here we go. Bear with me, technology takes a little bit. We can see that we've got invoices in there that we've been working through our process. But what I'm going to talk to you about today is I'm just going to show you a document that we've received and we brought in. In this case, it's a letter, but it could be any document. As you can see, we've got a viewing pane on the right-hand side where we're looking at the document we've got. Now, in this instance, me, Simon Godfrey, I'm working in Reading today from our office, but what I want to show you is the remote working functionality of this system as well, but also the access systems that we've got in place as well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to a colleague who could be, sorry, bear with me, could be, in this instance, a guy called Brian Ford. Brian Ford could be in Edinburgh, he could be in New York, doesn't really matter. As long as he's got an internet connection and a license to get into the product, he's got similar access to you. But I say similar because if I look here and I do a search for the documents, the document that he can see is not the same. He hasn't got the same accesses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my colleague, Brian, to do something for me. Okay, now this could also be done by workflow, and that takes configuration and setup, but a simple process could be that I'm going to assign him a task. So I'm going to use a stamp, and I'm going to create a task for Brian to do. So, hi Brian, could you change the text from blue to red? Okay, asked him to do something. I can in here I can set a date of when I want him to do it, and I want him to do it by tomorrow because it's quite important. And as we said before, we can control access within these systems. There's an awful lot that we can do, and we're showing you the very basics at the moment. But I could say that he could only read it and he can't make any changes, but I have asked him to make a change. So in this instance, I'm going to say to Brian, you've got edit functionality. Okay, we can say that if there was a list of people here that it has to be done by everybody or anyone, I'm just going to put down anyone because there's only one person in this list, and I'm going to create this simple workflow. Okay, now if I go back into my system as Brian and I just do a quick search of my tasks, you'll see I've got something to do. Okay, there's a document here, okay, which has got a stamp on it, and this is a basic audit trail because we put a stamp on it. But I've been asked to change the color from blue to red, so I'm going to edit the document. And what that does is it then opens up that document in Word. Bear with me a second, the internet's running a little bit slow. Okay. And here's the document. Now, I'm just going to make the simple change that was asked by myself. Bear in mind, I'm being 2 people today. Let's change that to red. And that's it done. So I'm working in the native Office 365 Word document here. And I'm just going to save that and close that. OK. Now, if I go back to my search, you'll now see, if I just update that, sorry. Search. You'll see that that document is now changed to red. If I click on that document, I can see a history of everything that's been done. I can see that this document was stored by me. I can see that changes were requested. I can see that I edited an index data by putting a request into somebody. I can see that Brian opened it. I can see that Brian edited it, and then I can see that I viewed it. So we've got a full history of who did what and when. We also talked about how we can show customers or we can make sure that we're sending the right version of a contract over. Version control is standard within this system. So if I click here, I can see a version history of everything that's been done. I can see that this document is 2.1 because a change has been made. I could go back to a previous version if I wanted to, and I could also go all the way back to the very first version if I wanted to make that the most up to date. Okay. Lastly, what we wanted to talk about was retention policies. Now, in here, the system is set up so that we can, when we store a document, in this instance, it could be a contract for a telephone. And again, this is all customizable. We can set this up to be all of your documents, all of your lists, and the way that you want it to be. But in this instance, if we store a telephone contract, it will be stored for 6 years. A lease for a building property might be stored for 7. That doesn't seem like it's long enough, to be honest with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to 25 years and save that. Now, I'm doing these because I have admin rights, but Brian wouldn't be able to change any of these functions. OK, so there's lots that we can do with this to lock down who can do what, show you audit trails, show you version history and everything else. So in this instance, I'm going to stop with the demo now. I'm going to go back to our slides and we will continue. So with the capture we've shown you in the first of the webinar series, together with the workflow that we showed you last time, and the security in the audit trail that we've just shown you today, I'm hoping that we've shown you a bit more of the art of the possible. We've shown you how we can potentially speed up the initial processes of capturing and inputting and approving and validating invoices before they're posted into our ERP. And now we've shown you how you can search for documents that are stored in an advanced archive in seconds rather than minutes or hours. Again, by doing this, we're increasing productivity in the department. Because your invoice data is being extracted by the latest in AI and machine learning, less mistakes are being made, which is improving your data accuracy. Remember, we're human, so we do make mistakes after all. And because we have an audit trail and things like version control, we know what information the information that we're looking for is the most accurate. If we go back to what we're saying about productivity, by utilizing applications like this, you could potentially grow your organization without having to increase the headcount and resources that you already have. Let's not forget the environmental impacts. We all need to do our bit. So if we can use less paper, less electricity, less toner, and create less waste, that's also got to be a good thing, hasn't it? So speed, productivity, accuracy, resource, and environment. We take the first letter for all of those statements up there. What could your business do with all that extra spare time? How much more margin could your business achieve if your staff had more spare time? I'm going to wrap up here, but I want to thank you all for joining us on the third of these webinar sessions. If you want to catch up on the first 2, they'll be available on our YouTube channel, and we'll be adding this recording in the coming days. You'll see that the next session is on Wednesday, the 22nd of May. We hope you can join us then, as we'll be looking at the benefits of how we can maximise the investments in this technology to deliver a fast return on your investment, and how this technology can be easily expanded into other areas of your organisation should you wish to in the future. And again, as I mentioned before, we'll also look at the impact of Gen Z and Alpha as they come into the workplace. So see you then. But before we go, have we had any questions come through, Mike?
Simon, now I've got two questions that came through. Just with regards to retention policies, when the document has reached the end of the policy, what happens to it?
So once a document goes into the system and a retention policy is activated, there's two things that can happen. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's an invoice, because we've been talking about those a lot recently. An invoice is a fairly insignificant document, unless you're obviously the tax man. You have to keep it for 7 years. But at the end of that policy, it's just deleted. It could be, though, that we've got something like, I don't know, in an HR function, it could be a disciplinary letter or something like that we've got with a member of staff. That's a little bit more sensitive. So what would happen there is the HR manager or HR director or whoever it would be would get a notification to say that this document is due to be deleted. What do they want to do? It might be a case of they say, yeah, we want to delete that, but it might be a case that somebody's still being a naughty boy or girl and they want to extend it for a period of time.
Super. And I have one more question, is that in the Kyocera service, where is the data actually stored?
Right. So Kyocera are a German organisation and they take data storage very, very seriously. There are 2 data centres that basically store the data. One, or the main data service, is held in Dublin under UK regulation. And the second storage centre is in the Netherlands. And effectively, there are 3 data shards in each data center, so the data is stored 6 times. So the likelihood of anything going down, I mean, it's sitting in Microsoft Azure, and Azure have an uptime of 99.898% or something like that. It's ridiculous. So your data is very, very, very safe.
Super.
Anything else?
No, that's all I have on the question side. Perfect.
Well, guys, thank you for joining us. As you can see, we will see you again on the 22nd of May when we're going to talk about the ROI aspects, and then obviously Gen Z and Alpha. But thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.